Okay, so we just finished up WWE RAW. We have Legends Night, Randy Orton is a legend killer, and we figured out the challenger for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble. So, let's talk about some of the highlights right now. Good afternoon, good evening, good whatever day it is to you guys. What's going on? Welcome to Assemble. I'm Matt. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great day on the internet, everybody. I gotta get that in. That's the whole spiel for the show. Anyways, I just want to talk about some of the highlights and some of the key moments coming out of this past Monday night's Raw episode. So we have Legends Night. That's a thing. We saw Hulk Hogan with his phone covered in Hulkamania, red and yellow, and then he talked to it, and then that was it. And he had a moment with Drew McIntyre, and they hulked out. It's kind of it for that piece. Okay, so the only piece that seemed to work when it came to Legends Night was Randy Orton throughout the whole thing. Randy talking about how when he took out the Fiend that, you know, he's starting to get angry at himself because he didn't go all the way with taking out Alexa Bliss by basically setting her on fire last week. So he's upset that he didn't do that. So now he's been going around and talking trash to all the legends. I didn't mind this. Number one, Legends Night, I don't think works. I don't think it's even a draw in my opinion. We'll see when the ratings actually come out this week, guys, but I don't think that it does anything for anybody. AEW on their side, and I don't want to get into them too much because this is a Raw episode, but AEW in terms of their legends, they do them well. They take Jake Roberts and they bring him in as a manager. They bring in Arn Anderson. They bring in they bring in these guys that are well known to try and elevate younger talent. This doesn't elevate anybody, and we'll get to the main event in a little bit, but this really doesn't help anybody. The only segments that seemed to really work were going to be when Randy Orton was interacting with Ric Flair, which I thought was actually really well done. I thought Rick's involvement with Charlotte's match, that was executed pretty well. And then that's kind of over. But again, it's a one night thing. We won't see Rick again next week. It's one and done. Charlotte tells Rick to get out of here, and that's the end of it. Randy talks trash to Ric Flair. Good interaction, good back and forth. That worked really well. But that's about it. And you see Randy interacting with guys like Big Show, with Mark Henry, with Ric Flair, like we mentioned, and talking about how he can beat everybody up. So for Randy's character development, it's good. He is showing that he's getting more and more dominant, and he's trying to push himself over the edge in terms of, and trying to get into that mode where he's probably ultimately going to end up fighting the Fiend again. And it's going to be like a kind of crazed out Randy Orton where they're going to have some wild extreme match. I don't know, but that's probably the direction that we're going to end up going. Legends Night overall, guys, and I said this in a previous episode where we say, you know, some of the top things that WWE needs to stop doing. You guys can go check that one out. I'll leave a link in the description below. But it doesn't really work anymore because we know that we're not going to get Hulk in the ring doing a leg drop. Mark Henry can't go. Big Show goes, you know, one match a year maybe. And at least with Big Show, he tries to put over other talent like Braun Strowman. But all of the legends we see, we know that we're going to get them in backstage segments, and that's basically what we got, other than them just being troped out to sit on the stage, you know, during the main event to watch the WWE title match between Keith Lee and Drew McIntyre, which in itself, guys, the Drew-Keith match was amazing. It was a great showcase for Keith to show off what he can do. It felt like a pay-per-view level match. I want to see them in a true feud. I'd kind of like to see Keith Lee get a little bit more dominant and go heel to face Drew McIntyre and build him up that way. That would give Keith a little bit more of an edge and drive him, give him more motivation versus two baby faces going at it. But this is the problem. You just have all of these legends. You have 10, 15 bodies standing on the stage, and, you know, the general audience can recognize them, and there's a little bit of nostalgia to see certain superstars. But at the end of the day, they're not involved in anything. So it's just, they wave and they're gone. And it doesn't help any of the stories in the current talent. And that's the big detriment to all of this, is that it's a 1 week shot in the arm. You don't even have the live crowd to play off of for guys like Hulk or Rick or anybody to be able to play off of that and get those actual reactions out of any of the audience. We don't have an audience there. So it's all very manufactured. And again, you're not utilizing any of these legends in any other capacity other than them just being backstage and you have Mickie James and Tatanka standing there. And so what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. They don't even talk. They don't have talking segments. So it doesn't really work. And then you're losing all of that airtime, which is 3 hours long, to be able to go in, and you don't utilize it for any of the other talent. Now we have to have this whole night dedicated to legends and giving them airtime, and it doesn't seem to do anything for anybody. And this was a big problem as we now talk about the main event. So again, the Keith Lee Drew match on paper itself, great match, fantastic. And that's, again, this is what I love about doing these Raw recaps and SmackDown recaps. We get to talk about some of the stuff that's really awesome here, guys. This was a great, great match. But the problem was, in my opinion, you were losing out on an opportunity with Keith, Drew, and even Sheamus, who's been in the mix for a while. Sheamus is nowhere to be seen on this episode other than the backstage piece when it comes to Hulk Hogan and Drew McIntyre, and he's now thrown out the side. That whole thing could actually be pretty good and develop into a really good story going into the Rumble. But we get this great, great one-on-one match for the title. Sure, you have legends as kind of window dressing in the backdrop there, just sitting there. And we saw a great, great sequence at the very end where, you know, we have Keith Lee going for the powerbomb and it turns into a Claymore. Really quick sequence, and I loved it so much. And then the match is over and Drew retains the title. And then you get Goldberg's music. Goldberg comes out to the ring as the big legend, and I guess kind of representing other legends. So Goldberg comes out to the ring and Goldberg starts talking trash to Drew immediately. Number one thing that I noticed, Keith Lee's just gone. They fist bump, him and Drew, and Keith Lee is just bye-bye. That's a problem. We can talk about that in a later episode about what that does. But so Keith just rolls out of the ring and he is gone and nowhere to be seen. He's out of this whole thing and he's forgotten. Maybe we're going to get Keith win the Rumble. Don't know. We'll have to do a predictions episode later. So now we get Goldberg and Drew face to face, and Goldberg goes off on some promo. And again, good promo by Bill. Like, he hit all his beats and hit all his spots, but so his motivation, guys, is respect. He feels that Drew doesn't respect any of the legends, which then Drew just rebuttals with, like, I have lots of respect for legends. And then that's it. So Goldberg goes off about how Drew doesn't show respect for the legends. He feels that he's better now and he could beat anybody now, even if they were in their prime, like Ric Flair, Mark Henry, or Goldberg, that Drew is just better than everybody. That's what Goldberg is coming out to face Drew about, is that he thinks that Drew feels he is better than everybody and all the legends before. And Drew just kind of squashes the whole motivation by just saying, no, it's not true. I respect all the legends. And Drew has been like a concrete babyface who has been all about respect. And that's been his entire MO and his entire character for well over a year now, is that he faces challengers, he builds up, he shows respect at the end of the match unless he faces a heel. But he's been all about respect. The whole Keith Lee match was about respect because it was two babyfaces going at it. And he showed respect to his opponent at the very end. And if it's for legends, he's never had a problem with any of the legends. So Goldberg's motivation for even being out in the ring within the world of WWE, it just doesn't even really work. So Goldberg then is just talking about how he's going after that title. And he wants to face Drew at the Royal Rumble. So there you have it. That is going to be your WWE title match at the Royal Rumble. It is going to be Goldberg versus Drew McIntyre for the championship. And ooh, guys, I talked about Goldberg specifically on our last episode, but this doesn't work for me because we get a 3-minute finisher match of Goldberg and Drew at the Rumble. It's not going to turn into anything. The only other scenario I can see, and maybe I just save it for the predictions, but, maybe it's going to lead into a Goldberg Roman, because I know they wanted to do that, but trying to figure out where they're going to end up at the end of the year in terms of WrestleMania, that's going to be very, very interesting. So this sets up this whole Goldberg Drew match now that we're going to get that no one asked for, and it's all based off of Goldberg thinking Drew lacks respect for legends. Goldberg pushes Drew down to the ground. Drew immediately gets up, and by the way, they were rushed for time because you could see the graphic coming up at the corner of the screen that they were hitting like their mark, that they're running out of time. So Drew was going really quick through this whole sequence, but Bill pushes Drew to the ground. And I think that it kind of felt like that was supposed to be the last shot that we saw, was Drew being pushed to the floor really hard by Bill. Drew immediately gets up and he starts just nosing himself right in Goldberg's face, and they start going at it and just chirping each other back and forth, and then boom, the show goes off the air. The main event promo segment, well done by Bill in terms of the promo and delivery. Drew did a good job, but there is no motivation there, and it doesn't make any sense. And then they just slot Bill into this. And this is a huge problem that I have when it comes to the utilizations of legends or part-timers or any of these stars, is that Bill just literally walks down the ramp. And in the world of WWE, he walks down the ramp and he just says, I want a title match because I'm a legend. And then they just challenge for it. And then Drew's just okay with it. Like, realistically, he should say, no, like, you got to go and beat Keith Lee now, maybe at the Rumble, for a #1 contendership, to then get the match with me. Why would you even do that? You know that Bill's only going to give you 3-4 minutes. Why don't you just have Bill fight? If the goal is to get to Bill to a main match for the title, have Bill do a contendership where he just squashes somebody, and then you can at least say he earned it. But they don't even do that. We get the fast track piece of Bill just scrubbing over everybody, anything else that they have built, any of the goodwill that they built up with Keith Lee at this point, and then now we're going to get this match. And this is going to be interesting to see what they're going to lay out when it comes to the Rumble, as well as where they're going to go for Mania this year. Guys, let me know if you enjoy the show, and if you can, and if you do me a favor, just hit that little bit of a thumbs up, because it really helps support the show, and watching the show to its entirety really goes a long way to be able to help us, just giving a whole stunner to the whole YouTube algorithm this year. So really appreciate you guys giving the time to watch the show. So Raw overall, guys, we didn't go in depth of like every single match. I want to be able to just talk to you about some of the key pieces here. And because it's Legends Night and that's the focus, and obviously the main event piece was really what they're trying to get home with, I have a lot of problems with what they're doing with trying to get Bill just shoehorned into this WWE title match. It's really going to be critical to see where they're going to go when they end up at the Rumble, who could possibly win the Royal Rumble, and what is it going to set up going into Mania. Are they going to give the title to Bill? Are they going to just do this one-off match where it's Bill versus Drew and Drew beats him to move on to something bigger? Who's going to be bigger than that, other than maybe your Rumble opponent or someone who wins a cage match at the Elimination Chamber? Like, you're using Bill in this middle point, and the motivation is not really there. And at least they have a couple of weeks to build this up. But that just means we're going to get a contract signing and a couple of talking segments. It doesn't really flow for me, in my opinion, because if Goldberg wins, then you've lost all this credibility and all of this build with Drew over this past year of losing the title, gaining the title, all of this stuff, going through opponents, being the main event star of Raw, and you lose it all to Goldberg. And really, Goldberg shouldn't really lose either, because on his side, storyline wise, he beat The Fiend, who is arguably stronger than Drew McIntyre. So shouldn't Bill just beat Drew McIntyre for the title? Again, there's a lot of problems here, and this is the issue when you do rely on legends for this Legends Night, and you want to cap it off with, a giant Goldberg match. Goldberg's a star. Goldberg will bring eyeballs to the table. People will tune in to see Goldberg on their TV screens, but at the end of the day, it's not going to necessarily help for long-term booking. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me below, what do you guys think is going to happen? Do you think that this is going to help the product? Do you think Bill is going to win the title? I thought Raw overall was kind of on a meh level, and that is probably because we had to have so much of the legends shoehorned into this. I think Randy Orton was a bright spot on this show. I thought even Ric Flair's involvement with Charlotte's match was actually really well done. And some of the matches that were just there, they were fine and they were good, but we don't get enough emphasis on it, unfortunately. Curious to see what they do with Bill. Not happy about it. But we'll see what happens for the rest of the week. There's always going to be lots of news coming out. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Assemble. I'm Matt. If you can, do me a favor, hit that like button. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen next leading into the Rumble. Give me your early Rumble predictions as well. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, thank you guys for assembling with us. See ya.